Watch him throw the ball, we gon' pick it off. You gon' let him hit the hole or you gon' cut it off. You gon' play through fourth and long or you gon' punt it off. Your defenders, heavy hitters, put your pads in. Don't be looking for the ref to throw no flags in. Keep the helmet on, keep the cleats tight. You the type to want to win by any means, right? You should look alive. This is Trap or Die.
Yes, sir. Welcome back to another Trap or Die podcast. I am your host, Smalley Mall, man. AJ and Dre is on the way. But while we wait on them, and before we get started, let's get the administrative items out of the way. As always, we appreciate everybody who's tapping that live, watching the show live. If you haven't done so already on the YouTube side, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. If you have, did she just mess up my? Okay, all right. If you have not followed or subscribed or rated or reviewed on the audio side, man, we definitely appreciate you if you tap in on that side, show your support, man. It's free to do so. And you know, we can never get enough ratings and reviews on Trap or Dive side. Jaren, appreciate you checking in live. Again, you're welcome to join the chat. Shout out to Twitter for allowing those tweets to come through, or those Periscope messages to come through. I think that's what it's called. Anyway, we have a few things to discuss, man. We know Adam Peters, since we last talked, has been named Washington Commanders general manager, which is a home run for everybody involved. You know, and I think for everybody who is on the outside looking in, people like me, people like AJ, people like Dre, this was as good as it can get if your owner and his new venture, your new owner for the Commanders, is able to land his top target. Jarian, you mentioned something, right? And I'm glad you brought this up. For those that's listening, Jarian said it's refreshing to have adults in the room, right? And as Adam Peters started speaking today, right? my main thing when I was listening, I was so paranoid. And now I know I'm not the only one who felt like this, and I'm not saying that y'all listening or watching felt like this, but like I felt like I had some. I felt like I had some sort of PTSD, bro. Like I swear I did. Like listening to Adam Peters talk, he sounded so professional, and he sounded so what's the word? Like his words were intentional, right? Um, and I didn't see like some bravado where you know there was something where like he was overly confident. Like he stated what he felt, he stated how he felt to get to where he is, like all these things, right? But I just couldn't help but think from the previous situations with previous front office individuals, previous head coaches, and again, I maybe have some healing to do. But hearing Adam Peters speak and speak so well, I was like, bro, I feel like they about to calm me. I know it's not happening. I just had this thought. I was a little nervous, man, but that's how good he was speaking to me. Like I was like, yo, I appreciate and respect everything that he's saying, but where's the slip? Where's the rug pull? But I know there ain't one, and that's a good thing that you mentioned, Jerry. And I was like, bro, he was on point. But I think that's the real good thing, and I have some specific quotes that we'll tap into that we can kind of dissect a little bit. So with that being said, let me go ahead and get Dre in. He just joined up, and we can kind of discuss that a little bit. Dre, what's going on with you, player? How you feeling, man?
What's good, man? Happy Founders Day. Well, happy GM Day, man. We good, happy man. Hey, look, I knew the press conference was going to happen today last week. No inside knowledge. I just figured this would be just the perfect day to do it. So I was looking forward to it, man. And, I'm sure we're going to get into it. But, man, it was good to see, Adam Peters talk and, hear his vision going forward.
Hell yeah. I mean, let's tap into it. And then we'll, on the back end after this Peters conversation, we'll talk about head coaching, updates, interviews, things like that. And kind of like, it's so crazy because we'll talk about it in a second. I just want to preview it. Dre, almost every game had a matchup where they were potential head coaching candidates for Washington. That was crazy to see. Ben Johnson versus Raheem Morris, Bobby Slowick. I think he was standalone. I don't think there was nobody on the Cleveland side. But either way, Bobby Slowick had his matchup. And then you look at who was the other game? It was one other game that slipped my mind.
You already said Ben Johnson,
Raheem Morris, Dan Quinn. There you go. Quinn had a matchup against Green Bay and that head coach over there. I'm drawing a blank on his name too. But, oh my goodness! And then even by byproduct, the Eagles OC, even though he wasn't like I don't think he's high up there at all. But I mean, they did what they did against Tampa Bay. And I guess technically, honestly, the Tampa Bay OC, like he's quiet too. But like that whole bunch of matchups. Anyway, let's go ahead and talk about Dan Quinn. Let's go ahead and talk about the pressure from Adam Peters. AJ's in the. I don't know what just happened to AJ, but I'll wait for AJ, make sure he's straight before we bring him up. But I'll get your opening thoughts, bro. Just your general thoughts. Like I said, when you were backstage, I was a little paranoid. Or maybe suffering from PTSD, knowing how well he spoke. I just felt like there was some slip under the rug or slip of the rug that was about to happen or that may be happening. But I think that I just need some healing to take place so I can recognize a good speaker and a professional speaker when I see one nowadays. Now that especially Dan Snyder is completely out of the building, all of his hires are essentially out of the building.
Yeah, I mean, for me, Ma, I kind of went into this. It's funny you mentioned all of that because I went into this with a bit different kind of perspective or reaction that I would have had in years past. Like in years past, I used to go into these things looking for, oh man, anything they say gonna win me over. It's kind of hard to lose a press conference. I mean, actually, in my younger years, the only hired, he wasn't a general manager. He was the head coach at the time, Jim Zorn. He was the only one that kind of made me skeptical in a press conference when he didn't even know our colors. He said
that was the main one.
the maroon and black.
I thought we
Yes,
was
I'm
getting
like,
new
okay.
uniforms. I said, hold on, Brad. We getting new
Yeah, like did we change colors or something? But I mean, he just he didn't know. So I mean, that's one way to lose it. But other than that, you usually go into these things expecting to hear great things. You're expecting to hear a bunch of fluff. But as a fan, you're kind of eating it all up. You're taking it all in. But this time, I went into it with a different approach because I know winning the press conference is a thing. Everyone says, "Oh, he won the press conference," and I don't even know what that means anymore because we've said that about everyone that's kind of stepped through here the last few years. Like we said, Ron won the press conference, but then when you kind of look back at what Ron did in the press conference, he had a cardinal sin in his first press conference. He put a timetable on how long it should take to rebuild. Fans would never let that one die down. We still talk about that today. Like it doesn't take 4 to 5 years. But that was one of the good answers, or one of the notable answers that I noticed from Adam Peters. He didn't go in, he didn't set a timetable. He said, hey, these things don't have timetables. He was saying, we want to see, we want to get to the point where we're seeing progress, like we did in San Fran when I first got there. Like the results may not have been there, but you've seen it coming through. You've seen it coming together. And, that's kind of the expectation he's setting here, which is good, which means don't come in here expecting a quick turnaround. But at the same time, you can hold us accountable for showing progress that should be seen early on in your start or your tenure. But those are some of the things. I mean, I thought it was real vague. And what I kind of took away from it was that they seem a little prepared. Again, I could be off. We could look at this a couple of years down and say, oh man, he didn't know what the hell he was talking about. But for me, looking at it now, it seems like they were more calculated, more prepared, and they weren't giving you a whole lot. It was like him and Josh had a plan before they stepped up at that press conference. Like, hey, we know we can't say too much. We still got a lot going on. We're going to give them a little bit, but we can't give them a lot. And they didn't stumble over their words. They weren't stumbling over their thoughts. It was, very matter of fact in what they were saying and what they were trying to get across. So, I mean, those are some of the things I like. But again, it's too early to say whether he won it or not. But I do love that they seem prepared. I mean, Adam seems like a very personable guy. I mean, he legit seemed happy. I don't think he stopped smiling the whole time he said it.
That's where I was about to go, Brad. Because like even when you think about the pressure in itself, because you made a really good point just in terms of like winning or losing a press conference. Like it's hard. Like the only way that this becomes a problem is if you look like the Philly coach in his intro press conference, bro. Like if you lose the press conference, bro, it's a story. But to that point, like some other things to take away when you mentioned like he was legit happy. And AJ just checked in for those that's listening. We'll get his thoughts next. One thing that he mentioned, bro, like he said he probably wasn't even a very good negotiator when he was in the room with Josh Harris, bro. So like the thought that and then Josh Harris confirmed it. Like unfortunately, he wasn't a good negotiator. Like I think for Adam Peters, when they asked him, how important was it for him to choose Washington, and he said it was everything. Like the opportunity with ownership in place and that entire group, like he was all in. And to your point, like he was smiling when he said it. He said that there was other great opportunities, but it's this situation made it easy for him to pass up every other one. So for a person who's coming in here with that mindset, and then Josh Harris like pulling back the curtain just a tad bit, like acknowledging, yeah, he won this job as soon as we offered it to him, essentially. Like that's good to hear. But also what that tells me, when I think about like foreshadowing, I think that there's going to be opportunity, and we're going to touch on this in a second too, because he spoke on this. But there's going to be opportunity in free agency to kind of reshape the narrative of Washington. And not just this year. We're talking about years to come when there's other key situations that we need, whether it's free agency or even trades and people wanting to come here. I think that's a good shape, because if you got a person that's high on the board is Adam Peters in your organization and that wants to come here and who was a terrible negotiator when he was in the room with the ownership, you're probably talking about some other things that you can kind of start to acknowledge can be real possibilities here in Washington. What's going on with you, AJ?
Cool. You can hear me?
Yes, sir. We good, man. We just over here just giving our general thoughts on what we heard today from Adam Peters and Josh Harris.
Yeah, I mean, I think can't really reveal too much in this presser because you don't have a head coach hired. So if you're going to be going out there interviewing a diverse amount of candidates, you can't really say but too much. What's the saying? You can't really put the cart before the horse. So it's like it had to be very vague. It had to be kind of straightforward in how he plans on approaching, in collaborative effort with that potential head coach. I mean, what I really took from it was, it's a new day, it's a new era. Um, I think that the expectation has to be you turning this thing around within 5 years, which is not really a lot of time. But when you look at just this weekend alone, teams that have been able to, achieve success, especially after being the Texans were 3-13-1 last year. Like they turned it around immediately with a head coach and new GM. And that's not to say that automatically has to be the result, but I think some of the fans or whatever are going to be expecting that as well. They're going to be expecting, some type of quick show of growth. They won't get the opportunity necessarily to be what is the record 2-13, or I don't even know what their record is this year, but they won't get the opportunity to sell that to the fan base of coming out this year with the same type of record. But I mean, I guess where I'm a bit confused, I know I shared with y'all in the group chat earlier, they said they already did like interviews with Mike McDonald and Anthony Weaver. So I'm wondering who like led those interviews. with
The committee. Yeah, no, I was gonna say, I think the committee was conducting those preliminary interviews, and who knows? I mean, Peters could have been in on it. I mean, well, we wouldn't know that because they can't put that out there because he wasn't under contract. But I mean, for the most part, I do believe that they were saying the committee was going to conduct interviews into the GM thing. And Nikki Javala just put out a tweet saying that since Peter signed his contract yesterday, he hasn't been on any head coaching interviews, but they said he will be leading in the center going forward.
Yeah, so I mean, at the end of the day, that's pretty much, the basis of everything. The same way they kind of move fast with hiring him, I expect them to move fast once again with this other process and going.
But do you think they need to move fast for this though, AJ? I mean, because from all accounts,
yeah.
we are the top job. Well, at least not the top job, but we're a top 3 job probably in most candidates' eyes. So it's not like in the past where we kind of had to jump on these things quickly because we weren't no one's first option or first, second, or third option probably. So do you really think they have to rush the head coaching process?
My bad, man. I'm in Kaiser.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if you was in a library,
I'm sitting in the area by myself, and then all of a sudden,
why you whispered.
Want to come sit next to me and shit. Like
he sounded like Eric Stokes when he wanted that man.
Because it was like I was sitting by myself. Like, ain't nothing wrong with me. Like, I don't know, my pop said something wrong with him. He asked me to come and get him and rush him to urgent care. But yeah, either way, I was sitting by myself, and now everybody want to come sit next to me and shit in a department that's not even fucking open. Like, but
you can tell that really pissed AJ off.
Yeah, because it's just like, bro, I'm sitting in a department that's closed, like, and you just came and sat here with your whole family. But yeah, either way, I think it is important to move fast on this. Like, look how many job opportunities are available out there. Then on top of that, there's other good quality jobs too. So if you feel like you identified your guy, like you gotta bust a move quick.
Well, I guess what's the question? Like, what's fast? Like, are we talking about this? Because I think that's kind of the conversation. Like Dre said, do you have to?
As soon as you know, like,
no.
If you interview somebody tomorrow,
I can hear you now. You froze for a second. Yeah, you good?
I'm still there. Yeah. So if you like interview your guy tomorrow and you feel like, hey, we don't need to talk to anybody else, go ahead and get that contract put together and sign it. Like, you don't have time to waste. And there's a lot of these candidates that are within the playoffs still, but you really don't have time to waste, man. Like, all of the top guys have like 3 to 4 interviews lined up, whether it be the Ben Johnsons, the Raheem Morris, the Harbaughs, the Belichick, and then you might have another opening such as like the Eagles that might come open. You feel me? Like, all the top guys that you revere on the marketplace have 3 to 4 interviews lined up. You need to go ahead and start going.
Yeah, I was gonna say the only reason I asked that was because I don't even think they can do in-person interviews until next week. So I was wondering if you kind of wanted to wait to do that, or you think they should probably already know who their guy is through the Zoom interviews, or if you just kind of wanted to cast that broader or at least the more thorough search of adding the in-person thing. I felt like maybe next week would be more likely than this week.
Yeah, I mean, I I don't remember all the new rules that they've updated it to. I know last week
I
was
remember it being a
virtual.
20-something.
Yeah,
With the
I
22nd.
remember like it was virtual, and then this week like some of those guys can do in-person interviews if they're within the playoffs. Um, and like you said, Maul, I think the official window for those that aren't in the playoffs, I mean that don't for those that are in the playoffs can't be hired until the 26th, but those that are without, like for example, the Atlanta Falcons, excuse me, the Atlanta Falcons could hire Bill Belichick now. The Chargers could hire Jim Harbaugh now. Um, but yeah, I think if you identify that's your guy, you don't need to waste anybody else's time and your time interviewing anyone else. You kind of start solidifying how you want to establish things. The benchmark is already set that it'll probably match Adam Peters' contract of 5 years. It's just, do you have how many other offers do you have on the table? If you're a Ben Johnson, who for some reason, which I feel like it's all PR, a lot of his details behind his hiring process has been public in comparison to everybody else. You've heard the 15 million benchmark a year. You've heard so and so things. You've heard connections with Adam Peters to Washington being pushed by national pundits. So it's like, I think that it will get done as far as locking in who their guy is before the weekend. And then by next week, when the 26th rolls around, if one of those guys happen to still be in the playoff hunt, they'll go ahead and get it confirmed immediately.
So we're gonna pause on the head coaching thing and just close one part of the pressure and then get back to head coaching. There was one thing that was interesting that everybody kind of took note of. If there was one hiccup, Dre, not in a negative way, but like if there was one hiccup with Peters is when he was asked about the surrounding or his thoughts on the roster, right? He had like a 2 or 3 second pause, and then he stated, "I believe that there's a few cornerstone pieces on this roster." I thought it was interesting, not from the standpoint of like I actually think that he thought the roster was bad. I thought there was 2 possibilities here. Maybe he doesn't fully know everybody on the roster yet, and he had to find a way to like think of people who can jog his memory quick. Oh, I know Terry McLaurin. I know Jonathan Allen. I know Deron Payne. I think that there's some few cornerstone pieces on this roster. Or I know Cam Curl too. Like I don't know what he's thinking about Cam. And there was one way to think about it. The other way to think about it was like, all right, I don't think these guys are that good right now, but let me kind of not say that they aren't good. And that's where you get the opening statement. Overall, on that response in itself, he said that he believes that they have a lot of work to do in just evaluating everybody. That's going to start with the coaches. And then when we hire a head coach, we'll sit down together and with the personnel department, and we'll sit down and evaluate everything and figure out where we need to be. He said he started a little bit, but he has a lot of work to do. And from that standpoint, you got it, AJ. But from that standpoint, I think for this roster, and I think for everything that's going on with Peters, there's going to be a lot early on. I don't know what the structure will be like once things get like settled, but early on, there's going to be a lot of collaboration going on, and probably from some of the people that's currently here in the front office.
Yeah, I mean, I know Adam knows the roster in and out, because that's the main thing of the interview. You got to be able to identify the roster. Like, what is your vision? What is your plan to write this shit? Like, those
to be clear though, I'm not saying he may do. I just meant like I don't think
I'm not
from 40 to 53.
You. Yeah, I'm not challenging you on that. What I'm saying is more so he can't be committal to I don't even know if I just use a real word, but he can't be committed to anybody in particular, like player-wise on this roster until they figure out who their head coach is, because anything could change. It's fluid. You feel me? It's not like they got an Aaron Donald or a Micah Parsons where you could be like, oh, that person is a franchise guy no matter what organization they're with. Like, you got pieces on your team that you could work with, but you don't have no one that has to stay. Is no one mandatory that needs to stay within the fold. So that's where I feel like he couldn't really make that bold statement, but he did give an inclination. There's a few cornerstones. Now, if you wanna play the guessing game, who those cornerstones are, go for it. I mean, I can think of maybe a couple off the top of my head, but at the end of the day, that's where he kind of left it. Where in his opening presser, he isn't committed to anyone fully. It's more so, let's see who we bring in here coach-wise and what we think we can do with them to fit them best within the system and get the best out of them. But I think that opens the door for anybody being able to get moved, if it makes sense.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm with you, AJ, as far as, like I said, I mean, Josh Harris noted how prepared Adam was in the interview and the questions he had. So, he studied everything. It sounded like he came in with a list of questions. I know your roster, I know this. So, I mean, he I think he probably knows the roster really well at this point, at where he's at with Washington. But I think that's probably one of the most attractive things for him or any general manager candidate, to be honest, because it's essentially a blank slate, and you're not really tied to, a lot of big time contracts. I mean, Washington has a lot of money. I mean, this may not be an attractive situation for a lot of head coaching candidates like the Bill Belichick's, the Mike Tomlins, assuming he will become available. But to guys like that, they're not going to look at a Washington situation and say, yeah, I would love to join that. But for a general manager, they look at this like, man, I get to paint my own picture. I get to go in here with a blank slate and do what I want to do with this roster. So, yeah, I don't think the roster is attractive at all to Adam Peters. I do think that question, he was trying to search for the right or the nice thing to say in that moment, or the most diplomatic thing in a sense. There probably is a couple of cornerstone guys. I mean, we tried to name, these guys on this podcast a couple of times.
Many you can bring over.
Yeah, exactly. Because remember the conversations we were having, we were talking about how much roster turnover do you have, And I mean, I got to imagine there's going to be a lot of guys that just won't be here next year. I mean, maybe some favorites, and I'm with AJ on the fact that I don't think anybody's safe on this roster, man. I mean, anybody. I know, you might think of Terry as the safest candidate. Now, I do see Terry as somebody that if he wants to be here, he'll be here. But guys like John Allen, Daron Payne, Cam Curl, who's a free agent. I mean, these are names that, probably won't be here next year. I mean, they could be here next year, but there's a possibility they won't. And it's very few guys you're going to look at on this roster and say, for sure, I know that guy will be back. I mean, I do, like we probably can name about 10 guys maybe, but I mean, there's like 43 other guys, out there. So, you could be looking at a whole different situation next year. And I think Adam knows that going in. But again, I think that's one of those things that made the job attractive because he essentially gets to create and craft things in his own image kind of right away in a sense.
Yeah. If there's one more thing to add, I think that, and I want to say y'all shared this in the group chat, but I'm reading this out loud for like the first time in a sense. But Rick Spielman, if you want to get an idea of like the work that he did since he came aboard, Albert Breer, what's today? Today's the 16th. Albert Breer yesterday, I believe, wrote in his latest edition of Monday Morning Quarterback the process that Spielman played in scouting the candidates for general manager and how Adam Peters landed on the immediate best five in a sense. So I'll be quick with this one and we can move forward. But quote unquote from Albert Breer in his latest edition of Monday Morning Quarterback, the Commanders process moved fast and really will started turning over a little over 3 weeks ago when former Golden State Warriors Bob Myers, who'd gone to work for Harris Blitzer Sports and Entertainment, reached out to former Vikings GM Rick Spielman and asked whether he'd come to Miami to meet with new Commanders owner Josh Harris. Spielman's been living on Florida's Gulf Coast and is in Fort Lauderdale every weekend for his work at CBS. That made things easy on everyone. Spielman got there over the weekend of Week 16, and Harris told him that while no decision is made on Coach Ron Rivera or his front office, he wants to be ready to roll for if the Commanders did move on. He invited Spielman to join Myers on his search committee, and as soon as possible, and as soon as Spielman accepted, asked the old GM to start doing background work to find the head of football operations and head coach. 2 weeks later, the original list of 15 that Spielman worked off was whittled down to 5. 3 days after that is where we got the hiring of Adam Peters as the new head of football operations. And then in order to do this, or his process, Spielman's process, he sought advice from several former NFL executives to get their short list of candidates ready for Myers and Harris. So that's essentially how he got things down. He was on the phone from 7:30 a.m. to 11 p.m., checking every box of the 5 guys he identified. And those came down to Peters, Kansas City's Mike Borgonzi, Cleveland's Glenn Cook, Chicago's Ian Cunningham, and Philadelphia's Alec Halaby. So for those who are trying to figure out everything that Spielman or even Bob Myers did, you kind of see the structure and how things were. It initially started with Bob Myers. Bob got Rick on board, and Rick did a ton of work for Josh Harris and that ownership group for the Washington Commanders. All right, Dre, this weekend has been very interesting. The highlights of my weekend was Dallas getting their ass whooped by the Green Bay Packers. I loved every second of that. Not only that, Green Bay covered and the overhit. So I was two-stepping in my man's living room, bro, taking shots at the hen dog.
So that was a bounce back day, right, Mo?
It was no.
Because Saturday night
it could have been. It could have been, bro. Saturday night was so frustrating. You know the crazy thing about Saturday night, bro. Like y'all didn't know what I was going through before this, bro. Like, and it was so slight. Like, not only did I lose the bread, but I also made a. We talked about this, but I made a no sweat play where I put so much money on the jump, not realizing, and this is my fault. It's nobody else's fault, but not realizing that it was only up to $10. I completely missed that, bro. So not only did I make that bet, I couldn't get my money back that I thought I was gonna get back. So now I lose the jump with the Chiefs jump. But before we headed out to the bar, bro, like I got this shirt from Zara, this t-shirt from Zara or sweatshirt from Zara, and I love that jump, bro. Like I only worn it one time since I copped that jump like 2 months ago. And I'm like, yeah, I'm about to wear this fit when we go to the bar and shit. Bro, I put the jump on. I took it to the cleaners like a few days ago. So I never tried it on. I go to this cleaners all the time. Like, I don't think nothing of it. I put the joint on, bro. The sweater shrunk. Like, it's impossible for me to wear. I'm like, bro. I'm like, no trip. I'm gonna go on the internet and I'm gonna buy another joint. I'm mad because I gotta spend money, but I'm gonna buy another one, right? Ain't online. So now the joint that I copped in Vegas, I will probably only have to buy it in Vegas. So I'm like, bro, well, this shit's out of luck. I can't get it. So then I go to the bar. And the shoes that I got are from Zara too. So like in my head, I'm like, when the drink spilled, I had a drink that spilled on my shoe. Not only that, Shorty took 20 minutes to bring me my drink. So I'm like, bruh. And
you was blown, bruh.
You was watching the game, so and you knew what side I was on. So like, not only is all of these things like in my head right now, like I'm losing my bet. I can't even get my drink in time. Like she's taking her time to get my drink. And then I got my drink for 2 seconds. I ain't even finished the drink. The drink spilled directly on the shoe. And I'm like, bruh.
Bro, you ain't say another word the rest of the night. You was quiet and mad. I said, that Mo is mad, bro.
Bruh. Like, and I was like, I couldn't even, like, I didn't have time to like explain to you all everything that I was going on. But I'm like, bro, like, imagine if these shoes ain't even online, bro. Like, I love these shoes, bro. And I got liquor on the joint, bro. I ain't even finished my drink. Like, I'm not about to buy another one. Like, that's just dead. And then she asked me when she left, she said, I gave you your drink, right?
Wrong answer. Wrong question.
Wrong question. So yes, it was a bounce back day up until I played who was the next game? After
Cowboys.
after the Cowboys game. They won the night game. It was the Detroit game.
No, yeah, Detroit. Yep.
Yeah, so like I had some money on Detroit too, and for a while they were covering, and then they couldn't score in the second half. So
I had the over in that game. I lost. I thought the over was going to hit easily in that joint because it was like 49, and they had scored a lot in the first half, but the Detroit ain't do nothing in the second half. So
yeah,
I lost my money.
It seemed like it. So yeah, that's kind of how things went. But anyway, Green Bay whooped Dallas. Philadelphia got whooped by Tampa Bay. Baker Mayfield put on a fucking show. And then obviously we look in Houston and Bobby Slowick and D'Amico Ryans handling the Cleveland Browns on their get back game after they lost just a month ago to Cleveland by at least 2 scores. I don't remember exact score, but anyway, point being, we've seen a few head coaching candidates over the weekend. What are some, we can kind of generalize this conversation, but what are some things that stood out to you from some of the coaching candidates? What I liked a lot from Bobby Slowick, and even like seeing how impressive of a start the Detroit Lions got off to against Raheem Morris was really good. But it's also crazy because that was a very good game because you kind of see like the battle back and forth between coordinators. Raheem Morris, who's a candidate, bounced back in the second half and completely shut them boys down. I think they didn't even have over 100 yards, I believe, of total offense in the second half. The Detroit Lions did. So seeing some of these situations play out was pretty interesting.
Look, I want to say this. I want to preface this by saying, when it comes to coordinators, and I always forget this when it comes to the coaches searches, but every time the coaches search comes around and fans, we get a list of the candidates, we tend to say that these candidates are only as good as their last performance, or only as good as or bad. Man. Yeah, exactly. So if Ben Johnson goes out there, he lights it up. Oh, he's great. Ben Johnson stinks it up. I don't want that guy as my head coach. Same with Slowick, any of the guys' name. That's what you kind of, a lot of fans are looking at that when they're watching these games. Like, man, they play horrible today. I would never hire that guy. I mean, I think that's the wrong way to look at it, but you do notice some things. I think you have to look at their whole body of work. And for me, going into this whole process, I never had a favorites list. Like, people were asking me since November, who do you want to replace Ron Rivera? I was like, look, I haven't even gotten that far yet because I want to see who we hire as a general manager. So now I can actually start delving deeper into these guys. I mean, sure, I'm going to watch the playoff games. I'm going to look at that, but I'm not going to try to base my whole assessment on what they do or what they don't do in this one or, this sudden death playoff game. But for me, I mean, Slowick is real impressive, man. It's a lot of things working for him. I love that he comes from the Shanahan coaching tree. I mean, any one of those guys that usually come from that tree, I mean, they've had some kind of success in the league. Looking at what he's done with the first year, CJ Stroud, I mean, it's been amazing to watch that. I mean, you can't attribute all of his or Stroud's success to Slowick, but you love to see a coordinator that has experience in, kind of developing or, calling plays for a first year starter, especially one with that success. Yeah, what you got?
Yeah, I was gonna say let's stop at Slowick for a second. I want you to keep going after that. But Slowick, you made a really good point. Like my thing, when I think about how people talk about certain coaches, especially from people who are outside of the market, which is going to be a good, like we're going to get these. I don't want to like over exert our energy because like in a sense of like the head coaching search, because we're probably going to find answers real soon. So we'll probably get an idea of like who we can on the Trapper Dive, who we can talk to, or who is worth talking to in that sense. Right. Maybe we just do Detroit and Houston and go from there. But anyway, point being, you mentioned the CJ Stroud thing. Like CJ Stroud was the number 2 overall pick. And like I think the dangers of giving too much credit to a person, right? And I'll give an example, but we're on Slowick right now. The example is like I remember seeing somebody on Twitter when I asked the question about like when the report came out that Ben Johnson may be like a favorite. I asked like how do they feel about that Adam Peters, Ben Johnson's duo. And somebody said how Ben Johnson was able to maximize the most out of Jared Goff. And I'm like Jared Goff just needed the right system. Like he showed what he did in LA. It wasn't enough, but like he showed he can play at a very high level, and he's doing that in Detroit. And for that standpoint, like and Jared Goff was like the number 2 overall pick or something like that. So when you look at number 1, so when you look at CJ Stroud, like you're talking about a number 2 overall pick, and you got to be very careful when you look at these things. Now, granted, in Washington, you have the number 2 overall pick. You're going to be able to have a very, very, very high influence in terms of decision making if you're a Bobby Slowick on who you would want to coach if you're with Adam Peters, right? In terms of that number 2 overall pick. But it's very important to acknowledge, like CJ Stroud was a dog of his own. And if you're impressed with what they do offensively, like the scheme is one thing, but the players around them and that leadership mentality, that leadership trait, like those qualities, bro, like I don't know how many you'll see in like a CJ Stroud. But your thoughts on Slowick, and you can keep going as well.
Yeah, no, I mean, like I said, that he will be one of my favorite candidates in the process, just because of, you looking at the overall body of work. Again, like you just said, like I said earlier, you can't attribute all of CJ Stroud's success to Slowick, but you like how they're working in tandem. And that's an important thing, because we've seen young guys come in with all the talent in the world, but sometimes you wonder about the guy that they're working with. Is he putting them in the right situations? Is he putting them in the best situations to succeed? But Slowick hasn't had any of those questions. He hasn't had any of those issues with CJ Stroud, and particularly, regarding the Commanders situation, we're going to be drafting number 2 in the draft. Same thing as the Texans did last year. We're most likely going to be drafting a quarterback. Same situation as the Texans last year. So he will be walking into a very familiar situation for himself, except he'll be obviously on an elevated level. So, I mean, that's one of the things for me I'm looking at. I mean, obviously, the playoff game, it just kind of showed even further, why this guy is a top candidate. And then there's the Ben Johnsons. I mean, I'm still kind of skeptical on how I feel about Ben Johnson overall. I mean, I don't have a super big opinion on him, but what I do hope in this process, we've been seeing the reports that he's the favorite to land a job. I really hope that's not the case off of, we just like him because of whatever. I don't know, because they haven't even interviewed him or anything yet. So I don't know what they're basing him being the favorite off of. I mean, sure, there may be some kind of connections that we don't know about, but I want this process to be more thorough, as far as we're actually interviewing these guys and we're actually getting everybody to listen to them and we're coming to a consensus on a guy. I don't want it to just be, oh, Ben Johnson's the favorite to land a job, and we're just going to kind of put on a dog and pony show with the rest of the candidates as far as interviews. Like, I hope the process is actually thorough. That being said, I don't mind Ben Johnson. Like, I mean, he has done some really good things with Detroit. He also comes from a coaching staff that's probably going to generate lots of coaches. Like, Dan Campbell is probably going to be that next star coach in the NFL.
And he has a ton of player coaches on his staff.
Yes. So that's the thing. I mean, I'm looking at that when I'm looking at the candidates. Are they coming from a strong coaching tree? Because when we're looking at guys who are coordinators who've never been coaches before, we don't know how they're going to lead men. We don't know how they're going to lead a locker room. We know they can dial up an offense. We know they can dial up a defense, but can they lead 53 men consistently? Like, are they going to get their message across? Can they be received? That's the type of stuff we're looking for. So you kind of look at those coaching trees, like the Dan Campbells, even going to the Shanahans. Like, you love those type of trees because these guys are bringing in guys, and this is a point. I forget who said this. This was a while ago, but they said Mike Shanahan, he would bring in coaches. He was one of the few coaches that wasn't scared to bring in guys that could challenge him. A lot of coaches like to bring in guys that are never a threat to them. Maybe a guy that can eventually replace them. You like to see guys come from that staff. Like, if Shanahan and them want to bring in guys that they feel like can challenge them, then you must think that those guys can coach their asses off at some point. So that's why I look at kind of the trees more so than, the last game that they played or the last 2 games that they coached. I'm looking at the backgrounds they come from, because that may show you how their ability to lead translates to the next level.
Have you heard Ben Johnson speak at all?
No, I have not.
Okay, so I'm gonna send you. I'm gonna put it in the chat too, since everybody we have a bunch of people in here, and while we do that, if you haven't done so already, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. If you're on the Twitter or Twitch side, man, try to migrate over if you can over to that YouTube side, man. And oh Lord, I didn't. Good Lord. Hold on, let's try this. Send it this way because it's on YouTube. All right. So I'll send this in the chat and then I'll DM this to us, Dre. But shout out to Brussels who sent this our way or sent this my way. Where I found it really. But point being with Peters in Johnson, right? I hate saying their last name, like that is a terrible combination. But
Peter and Johnson.
hey, bruh. But like when you hear Ben Johnson speak, please look at that, everybody. If you haven't done so already, look at that YouTube link. It's right here. But when you take a look at that, this was an interview or his pressure in June of last year, and he's talking about himself, his growth as a coach, his growth as a leader, even acknowledging what being self-aware of like his habits. He mentioned how he was a coach who could have been who was micromanaging way too much. He found himself micromanaging, but he saw the growth in his staff in the sense of like he was able to trust them and that everybody was on the same page. So it became less of a micromanaging and offensive meetings, and it became more of like player meetings or individual meetings from the offensive side of things. And like he was able to speak to players' growth specifically about like what they wanted out of themselves, but also like from a coach standpoint, how he recognized this person really wants to be better. And he identified those things. He identified even in the run game. Dre, I'm gonna say this. I'm gonna ask you this question before I even say it because I'm sure you have an answer. What is or you have an answer that it tailors what I'm about to say. What do you think about the Detroit Lions run game? Like there is no right or wrong from your perspective. What do you think about it generally when you watch them and things like that?
Well, I mean, I like the way that they use their backs. I mean, earlier in the season, you know, I was watching them because I had Jahmyr Gibbs on my fantasy team. So I was like, man, why aren't they using Jahmyr Gibbs more? And then you see David Montgomery, and he's balling out. I mean, I think David Montgomery has probably played better here than he ever played in Chicago. Like, I mean, I do actually like the way they use the run game. I think it's smart, and I think it's something that Jared Goff actually leans on a lot, what you need with a quarterback like Jared Goff. I mean, not to say that Jared Goff can't go out there and sling it 60 times a game, but that running game really helps them do what they do with Jared Goff. So, I mean, I really love the way that they use their backs.
All right, so to add to that, right, one of the things that he mentioned in this pressure was the fact that he thought last year they left a lot of meat on the bone in terms of the run game. Like he felt like some of those 3 or 4 yard gains that they had in Detroit, there were explosives waiting to happen, and they just missed the opportunity. So he spent time in that offseason trying to find ways to become more explosive. And you mentioned your opinion on Jahmyr and David Montgomery. Both of those guys nearly 1,000 yards apiece, bro. And this is exactly what we're seeing if you revisit in past time. Somebody who's very aware of how this run game could be much better for his offense, bro. So exactly, and just self-correcting and course correcting and things like that. And the reason why I bring this up and why I think it's important, Adam Peters in his presser said, what are the important factors of hiring a head coach, right? He said, I think in any head coach and any leader, it is leadership. Leadership, great communication, being able to be honest, direct and upfront, having all of those qualities, and they're all intertwined. Everything that I just said to you was a leadership. It was him communicating well, and it was him being honest about his players. I'm not saying this is the actual candidate. I'm just saying this is like, because if you never heard him speak, which I haven't, this was the first interview or presser I heard from him. Like, this is somebody who has been able to literally in one presser before the season even started tell you what he wanted out of his offense, what he thought, what he recognized to be himself in terms of a micromanager and why he was doing that, but also why he's backed off of being a micromanager. And then even identifying players and what they want and how great they want to be and things like that to that nature. So from that standpoint of Ben Johnson, I think it's very interesting, but also if you haven't seen that I put in the chat for everybody, take a look at that, man. It's at least something worth watching to understand how he thinks. And I'm gonna look at it a little bit more. So shout out to Brussels. I see you in here as well. Shout out to Brussels for even putting that on Twitter. So I'm gonna tap into some more Ben Johnson clips and by a byproduct, I'll look in the.
I'm about to say, Maul sold the hell out of that. You sold that, brother.
I'm just being honest, bro. Like that's literally like what Peter said is literally, it's the timing is incredible for me to find it or to see it on the timeline. Like he literally did exactly what Peters is looking for. It's not about offensive or defensive, and that's why I brought it up. Like it's about leadership, bro. And like that's the makings of a leader.
But do you feel like I haven't listened to the clip or whole video at all, but I can tell you just from my naked eye, I've been disappointed in how Jahmyr Gibbs was underutilized in the season overall. Like I felt like a lot of the carries should have went to him more. Yeah, David Montgomery is a solid back, but if I'm not mistaken, David Montgomery's on a 1-year deal. But like from everything that you just broke down while I was backstage and back on stage, do you feel like he met those goals that he set out and told everyone in the media before the season kicked off?
He had
like, do you feel like the Lions offense is like super explosive? I think they rank number 3 overall, but do you feel like they're truly explosive in comparison to like Miami, for example?
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about 2 explosive offenses. I don't think that they have Detroit. I don't think that they have any Tariq Hill or Jalen Waddle on their team, and that stands out.
That changed
But they have exactly. But hold on. But they do have Sam Laporta. They do have David Montgomery. They do have Jahmyr Gibbs, and they do have Amon-Ra St. Brown. Those are 2 different styles. Those are different styles of players on their offense. You're talking about an offense who is number 5 in the NFL in terms of rushing yards, and you're talking about David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs, who have 235 touches respectively, and David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs 234. And Jahmyr Gibbs has 1,200 yards from scrimmage. David Montgomery has 1,100 yards from scrimmage. I can look at the Miami Dolphins and I can say that they probably don't come close in terms of the actual comparison statistics between Mostert and A-Chain. And then on top of that, you have 24 touchdowns between Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. So when I think about usage, there can be an opinion about them being underutilized. I can also say that I saw it. I remember you saying that from their first game. So like, I don't know, like in Jahmyr Gibbs, I do acknowledge he didn't get that many. That was actually very weird and actually impressive that they won that game against the Kansas City Chiefs. But at the same time, I think as the season went along, you saw how they were able to manage David and Jahmyr in terms of like splitting carries. And I don't even know how this got here because I was actually just pointing out the fact that this was a leadership conversation. But I think to Jarian's point, he mentioned he wasn't like he's concerned about like the first half compared to second half thing with Detroit. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that's not a concern. I just think that there's always going to be context. You're talking about Raheem Morris, Dre. We talked about this. Like Raheem Morris is on the other side of the football. Like he's going to have answers for you too. And I think if you're talking about somebody who's qualified to be a head coach, you're talking about 2 head coaching candidates battling each other. Like that's an important part of the conversation too. So I hope that answers your question. I think that Detroit used both their running backs exactly how they wanted to.
Yeah, I mean, I just asked that because when you take a Jahmyr Gibbs top 20 pick, right? For example, last year Jamal Williams, who's now with the Saints, he had like 18 rushing touchdowns. And I want to say probably Swift had about maybe 5 or 6. So I'm just wondering, like, I don't have all the numbers in front of me, if the rushing game was that much more increasingly better with the subtraction of 2 of those running backs in Swift and Williams, and now the addition of Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs.
Oh, go ahead, Dre, if you had thoughts. Oh, sorry, pause for a second. Devon A-Chain, and Raheem Mostert. Mostert had 1,100 yards from scrimmage. A-Chain had 997. Raheem Mostert had a crazy ass season with 21 touchdowns. And then A-Chain had 11. So those are your side by side stats. But go ahead, Dre.
Yeah, I was just gonna say to this. I mean, I was with AJ as far as earlier in the season. I did feel like they could have got Jahmyr Gibbs more utilized, especially in the passing game. I thought he would be more of that because that's what he was at Alabama. I mean, the dude was a hell of a receiving threat out of the backfield. I mean, he was almost like a Kamara for the Saints. I mean, that's what he kind of reminded me of. But I mean, as far as how the season went, it's hard to complain when you look back on it. Like you said, the third ranked offense in the league, and both running backs were highly successful. Like they found a way to kind of incorporate all of those guys, and not even just those guys. I mean, as you mentioned, Mo, I mean, they got the Ross A. Brown. I mean, the nice tight end, Laporta. You know, that's a lot of talent. That's a lot of mouths to feed on the offense, and they found a way to kind of get all of those guys that have a household name at this point in the NFL. I mean, this is largely a reason why they are what they are. And I know you mentioned Miami's offense, AJ. Miami's offense, to me, yes, it's explosive as hell because you got Tyreek Hill, one of the biggest burners in the NFL. No one can match with his speed. But when they played big games against big teams, I thought the offense folded a lot. Miami's offense, that is. You know, I think Detroit's offense is more consistent in the matter of they're tough to stop every drive. I mean, they might not hit you with the explosive plays every drive, but they are a team that's going to chunk yard you to death, and they're going to get down the field. So it's like holding them to a field goal or usually stopping them at some point. It feels like a real big success because they're usually able to move the ball at will. I mean, that's just the type of offense they're running. Like, I mean, we played against them last year before they even had that name last year. And, man, that offense was tough as hell to stop last year. And they didn't have Jahmyr Gibbs last year. They didn't have David Montgomery last year either. But it just goes to show you that I do think Ben Johnson knows what he's doing. I mean, I just kind of go back to, like I said, I hope he isn't the odds-on favorite without anybody having interviewed yet. Like, I want this to be a really thorough process. And, again, I would not be mad at getting Ben Johnson. I mean, Ben Johnson, like I said, he's a legitimate candidate at this point. But I just want the fair process.
Okay. All right. So we went through Ben. We went through Slowick. Where we at? Raheem. Do we have any thoughts on? Well, let's because we did two positives. Let's talk about Dan Quinn. Now there was important. Like people mentioned this, and I agree. Reluctantly, I agree, but I agree. Yeah, you can't judge like coaches on their last impression, whether it always helps if they're really good in their like the last impression that they leave. But if it's really bad, like that, the moment that led up to them being a candidate doesn't stop at that moment. But I do have like general questions in terms of team building when you think about certain players. Like, was Dan Quinn playing a pivotal role in how he views his second level, right? Like their linebacker or their second level is very undersized. And if you can get to that second level consistently in the run game, like you can take over a game against Dallas's defense. And like that's kind of where I think about like philosophically, where is she at as a head coach? And that's the one thing where I would say if there was a conversation about Dan Quinn, it shouldn't be about like the fact that they couldn't stop the Green Bay Packers for 6 out of their last 7 drives, which is alarming in my opinion. But more importantly, what's his philosophy? Does he like is what they did in Dallas making the best out of their situation, or is this something where he's like, I want my defenses to look like that? And that's kind of where it's like, I don't know if that's sustainable in January at all.
Well, see, but a guy like Dan Quinn, we actually already know what he looks like as a head coach because he's already coached the Atlanta Falcons. But I mean, he with the Cowboys, I thought the defense was impressive all season. And you're right, you do have to kind of take those things into consideration, especially how they ended with the Packers. Like you wonder, is there a leadership issue in a sense in a big game? Like why didn't his players respond to him in this certain moment? I mean, that's a totally valid question. And not even just that game. You can go back to the Atlanta Falcons when he coached in the Super Bowl, how they lost that game to the New England Patriots where they allowed a 28-3 comeback. Like how does these things happen? Like these embarrassing moments, you know, in a sense. That's a very valid question, you know, but I just wonder if, you know, the body of work, what he did all season, if that's going to outweigh those last little critical moments. Like for me personally, I mean, I kind of view him as a retread. Like I think he's the quintessential retread option or example of a retread, you know, versus someone else. But I don't know if I'm holding it too much against them what happened against Green Bay. Like I said, I'm more about the whole body of work, but I just for me, I can go back and look at his Atlanta Falcons tenure, and that probably makes me put a little bit more pause on it than anything he probably did all year with Dallas.
Yeah, I think when it comes to Dan Quinn, like, or any coach, for example, like, as just focusing on Ben Johnson, if he goes and has a stinker, this weekend, can't really hold that against him. You got to look at the full body of work. And what Dan Quinn has been doing since being the DC in Dallas, he's been doing an amazing damn job. Also working with one of the best pass rushers that we've ever seen in NFL history. But I think my issue with Dan Quinn is the military approach. So a lot of the things that they were doing in Atlanta was heavily military focused. I want to stay as far as possible away from any type of military approach
Ron
or
Rivera.
resemblance to Ron Rivera. Yeah, like that's my whole thing with Dan Quinn. I think what you did see in his tenureship towards the end after he lost Kyle Shanahan was going through an issue trying to find that next person to replace Kyle Shanahan from the play caller standpoint. Steve Sarkisian, who's now the coach of the Texas Longhorns, was over there as the OC. And then even when Raheem was actually on that staff too, working on the defensive side of the ball, and then moved over to the offensive side. And when Dan Quinn actually got fired, Raheem stepped in as the interim head coach. So there's a lot of connections where you could see Adam Peters being interested in Dan Quinn. For me, I just don't think he would be the right fit for this particular job. I think that Dan Quinn could make headway elsewhere and do his thing and rock out. I just don't believe that it would be a good fit in Washington. But, maybe his old stomping grounds where he was able to establish um, LOB, Legion of Boom, in Seattle, that might be something that could work for him, or even the Tennessee Titans.
Well, see, AJ, I was going to actually ask you real quick on the whole military question. I mean, I do agree that he's probably a better fit at Seattle where he originated. But does the military thing factor much for you if the guy isn't making or he doesn't have total control? Because, obviously with Ron, it was an issue because he had total control from the front office on down, whereas Dan Quinn would only have control of the players on this roster.
Yeah, I mean, I still believe that the head coach still has a voice in how they set up everything. So like some of the things that they were doing in Atlanta was similar to like actually going through military boot camps. Like that's how it was established with the Falcons. You feel me? A lot of it got masked because they were winning. They did end up getting to a Super Bowl during his tenureship. But once Kyle Shanahan kind of moved out the fold from an offensive standpoint, all of that came to a head, and no longer did he really have the pulse of the team, and that led to him being fired. Yeah, for me, I just don't know if that approach really works anymore. 2024, yeah, we're in 2024. I think a guy like Bieniemy's approach could still work, but a guy that's full on and really buying in to the military concept and ideology and running the show is a bit different than what he's doing right now in Dallas. Like he has to fall back and find his place just as DC and not the HC. So, it's still Mike McCarthy's show. Maybe he's learned some things along the way, because that's what you hope, when you do get fired and you do get that second opportunity, that you learn some things and you adjust when you do get that next opportunity. I think last week we seen a lot of those coaches celebrated, and they all got second opportunities, whether it be a Pete Carroll, formerly of the Jets, and then getting the Seahawks job, Nick Saban, whether it be LSU, Cleveland back in the day, Miami Dolphins,
Bill Belichick.
and Bill Belichick as well. So there's nothing wrong with retreads. Is what have you learned, from your past mistakes, and that's where I felt like with Ron Rivera, he didn't even get a moment to sit back and relax and figure out what he did learn from his failures. He just got an opportunity and jumped right back into it. But you can even see the difference in, like, take Mike McCarthy, Dallas. Like, he's different in his approach than he used to be with the Green Bay Packers. So I think that's one of the main questions I would ask if I was in, a meeting with one of the guys that might be getting their second opportunity, such as a Dan Quinn. Like, what have you learned? What is your plan at OC? Like, what is the plan if that person gets hired? How do you end up replacing that person with, maybe having the right quarterbacks coach or wide receivers coach on deck?
So the last guy, Dan Quinn, by the way, for those who don't know, scheduled for an interview this Thursday, the 18th, and Ben Johnson scheduled for an interview Friday the 19th. Raheem Morris is the last one, who he also is scheduled for an interview this week. As far as I know, no date confirmed. Maybe y'all know, but scheduled for an interview this week. Last one is Raheem Morris of the guys that we saw this week. Where are we at with him? I didn't realize when I was watching that game, their interior tackle, who's a rookie, bro, has like 8, or interior lineman, defensive lineman has like 8 sacks, bro. And like I think we known from watching Deron Payne play last year, that many amount of sacks, even talking about 7 or more, like that's an insane number to get. And for him to get that as a rookie, bro, is impressive from a player standpoint. But it's also interesting to see how Raheem Morris, with so many rookie and younger guys on his roster after a mass exodus of veterans since they won that Super Bowl, only leaving really mainly Aaron Donald, how that the defense was like, it wasn't a top 10 defense, but it was good enough for that offense and good enough for them to win, I think, like 6 or 7 out of their last 8 or something like that. I actually want to say 7 straight games to end the season and got them into the playoffs after what, a 3-6 start, I believe. And dealing with some injuries at quarterback before Stafford came back. But that defense stepped up big time, and Raheem Morris was a big contributor to that. What do we think about Raheem and I guess while we wait for the head coaching decisions?
Yeah, I mean, I think what you just pinpoint is Kobe Turner, 3rd round pick. They ended up, finishing off the season with 8 sacks as a rookie. And then they got another guy on their defensive rookie, another 3rd round pick, Byron Young, who I think finished with either 8 or 9 sacks as well. So with Raheem, he's not coming in trying to be like a defensive juggernaut. I think if he were to come in and get any job anywhere, he wouldn't even want to call, per se, the defensive play caller. He'd probably try to hire Ajero from the Panthers, who's been mentioned as a name for a couple jobs out there too. They're all from the same family tree, I guess you could say, of coaches. But yeah, I mean, I think Raheem, he's going to be able to put guys in the best position to win, listen to them, play to their strengths, and ultimately just be a leader. I think you could see some of the struggles with the Rams defense in that first half against the Lions. A lot of those guys are young. They're in their 1st or 2nd year of playing in the league. The veteran presence is Aaron Donald, but everybody else, like I said, is a 1st or 2nd year player, and he still was able to make shit shake with them. In the second half, he completely shut down Ben Johnson's offense to 3 points. So I think that counts for something, but just the overall job that he did the entire season with the Rams defense, where, even me and yourself, Maul, and Dre, us being avid football guys, we could barely name anybody on that damn roster defensively for the Rams besides Aaron Donald. I think that speaks volumes, especially when you're coming into a situation like Washington, where you're gonna have to rely on a lot of your youth to take up these reps.
Look,
one quick thing just to say, according to Ben Standig, timing is perfect. Just got reported. Raheem Morris is scheduled to interview same day as Dan Quinn, so Thursday is where Raheem will interview. But go ahead, Dre.
Cool. No, for Raheem Morris, honestly, he's probably my favorite of the retread candidates, and that's because when he first became a head coach with Tampa Bay, I think he was one of the youngest head coaches in NFL history. I think he was 33 when he first started out with Tampa Bay. I mean, he didn't last long. The tenure didn't end up being good, but I mean, he was young, and it's hard to kind of be that young in that era as well. He didn't come in, later in when it was kind of, like the Sean McVay thing where he can come in, have a passing game no one's seen. But anyway, Raheem Moore started young, had a not so successful 3 years, but it's what he did after that. I mean, he went a ton of different places. He even ended up in Washington under the Mike Shanahan staff. He was the defensive backs coach here. But then he went to the Falcons, and something really interesting. I mean, everyone knows Raheem Morris as a defensive guy, but he went to the Falcons, and he was their associate head coach. He was their passing game coordinator. He was their wide receivers coach. Then he went back to the defensive side, and he was the defensive coordinator. So he's done a lot of different things since he's left Tampa Bay as the head coach. So he's got a lot of different experience in a lot of different areas. And I also think he's kind of a natural leader as well. I mean, it was probably kind of hard to grasp that fully at the age he was when he started out as a coach, but you got to look at the stops he's been at, the coaches he's been under. I mean, it's been pretty impressive to look at, the list of things. But like I said, the versatility is what impresses me about Raheem. Like, he's not going to be a guy that's going to come in and be like, well, I only know the defense, I'm only going to be focused on this. No, he has experience coaching on both sides of the ball. And I think that'll go a long way. And you see he has success usually with his units. Whatever units he's coaching, they usually have some sort of success. And that's why you see his name is the hot candidate again. And he's not even 50 years old yet. He's still in his 40s. Like, so Raheem has a lot of good years ahead of him, which is why he would be my favorite if you wanted to go the retread route again.
Yeah, I guess to close it out, I think Raheem is probably more intriguing than Dan Quinn. I am interested to seeing like how they stack up in Peter's mind. In terms, well, Peters and the Harris group. I would love to see like how they would rank their candidates. I think Raheem, to your point, Dre, is interesting. Like when you have that youth experience, you get to learn a lot, especially when you move around as often as you do. Like I think about comparison standpoint. What's that dude name? He got fired in Vegas this year. Josh McDaniels. Josh McDaniels, when he got let go from Denver, he just went back to New England. he didn't think about going elsewhere. Like he went to what he knew. And for Raheem to be well traveled from that standpoint and just understanding like there's other opportunities out here, maneuvering and just learning different cultures, organizations, but also like seeing new faces and maybe even because he was never a head coach since he moved on from his first opportunity. But he gets to see how different coaches move. He gets to see how different organizations operate. But also all within that, like you have to adapt. And being able to adapt to different situations and understanding what's best for like your group of guys, like that's just as important. And the reason why I bring up Josh McDaniels, like they're in similar circumstances, right? Because they were both young when they got their first opportunity. But it's not about like the result being the same. It's like, how did you handle it after you got let go from your first job? And those are the differences. Josh McDaniels went back to his old same old shit in New England. And Raheem Morris said, I'm gonna keep on building and developing and I'm gonna get ready for my next opportunity. You say he's how old? He's in his 40s, right?
Raheem 47.
47.
Got a young little wife too.
Hey, 47, bro, with plenty of opportunity in front of you, bro. And I think those are the differences from how you handle your mistakes. What do you do? Do you resort back to what you know, or do you challenge yourself to grow? And I think that's the difference between McDaniels and Raheem Morris. Not saying that McDaniels didn't grow, but it's like you only know what you knew, and that's what got you in trouble in Vegas again. So I would definitely think that for me, Raheem Morris is the favorite in terms of the retread options.
Yeah, and I also think over the weekend it was very interesting because you rarely see this. Before the Rams even played their game on, what was it, Saturday night or Sunday night?
The Rams played Sunday night.
Yeah, before they played their game, the Rams COO Kevin Demoff was like going hard on his Twitter profile, like speaking in favoritism of Raheem Morris. Like, this is the greatest leader you'll ever meet. Like, we all vouch for him in this room. Sean McVay has publicly, Kyle Shanahan has, John Lynch has, Jalen Ramsey, Bobby Wagner, Andrew Whitworth, Aaron Donald, all these different guys,
Name drop.
we stand behind them. And I think that's one thing that works in Raheem's favor is Adam Peters is the GM, so he knows a lot about Raheem Morris. And on top of that, whoever he brings on the staff is kind of going to replicate that that feel that everyone's been trying to get as well. The San Francisco and the Rams tree is going to be a mixture of Kyle Shanahan's guys and Sean McVay guys. So that could be like a Clint Kubiak who could be an OC getting his name out there for head coaching opportunities. Like I said, a Jero who called the defense for the Panthers this year, been a top guy out there. Even a Thomas Brown, some people might be against him due to how things went in Carolina, but he's still one of those young top guys that didn't really get to call the shots OC wise in Carolina as we all thought he would and as he envisioned. But I think his staff that he could put in front of any organization will replicate exactly what they've been trying to bite off of, which is the Kyle Shanahan and McVay tree of coaches.
Hey, what's today? Tuesday? Okay. So we kind of have an idea of who the candidates may be. Peters is getting to work. I think for us, this is a good lengthy conversation and that we can call it quits right now. I appreciate everybody who's tapped in live on the YouTube side. Again, make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. The fellas, we're going to play this by ear as always, given that this is fluctuating. We may have to do a breaking news, whatever them Jones emergency podcast. We may do that. I don't know. Otherwise, we'll see each other next Tuesday, or maybe even tap in on the weekend if we hear some type of updates. What's up, AJ?
Who y'all got winning the games this weekend?
Oh Lord, I think Buffalo finally finna do it, bro. They finally finna beat Kansas City. I think so. I think Baltimore may be in for a struggle their first game. I don't think that they're going to lose, but I think that as strong as they've been throughout the season, in some moments they had some letdowns, like defensively, which is surprising. So I think that Houston will find a way to keep it close, especially after they got smoked the first game. But Baltimore wins. I think Buffalo wins. I think San Fran wins. And who's the other game? Detroit and Tampa Bay. That's actually going to be tough in my opinion. I ain't going to lie to you. Just the matchup wise, I don't think that Tampa Bay. I don't think Detroit's secondary is that good, and they've been showing it all season long. So I honestly think that one's a toss up.
I was thinking about that too, Maul, but I'm going with all the home teams. I got all the home teams winning, and I'm gonna even take it a step farther. I got the Bills being the dark horse Super Bowl candidate out of the AFC. I know everyone has already written Baltimore in there, but I've been saying for some weeks now because Buffalo's been playing some really good ball down the stretch.
They've been locked in for a minute.
I think Buffalo can get Baltimore next week if they. Obviously they got to get past the Chiefs first, but they are my dark horse AFC Super Bowl candidate. So yeah,
I see Baltimore and Buffalo playing each other in that conference title game. I see that.
Yeah, I definitely see Buffalo losing this weekend. I just think it's Mahomes' first road game in the playoffs. I think he has those boys locked in, and defensively, I think they'll come through. I definitely got Baltimore beating Houston. The other matchup is Packers and
Niners.
Packers and Niners. Yeah, Niners got that. Now, in regards to the Lions and Bucks game, it's going to be a hell of a matchup between Todd Bowles and Ben Johnson. I'm excited to see that. I haven't made my decision yet, but I'll have one. I'll have one by Sunday. They play Sunday, right?
I think they play Sunday.
Yeah.
No. So I think if I'm not mistaken, I have it right here. Yeah, actually, the Chiefs and Bills play Sunday. Packers and 49ers on Saturday. So those are the two night games on the weekend.
So the Bucks and Lions play
Sunday, 3:00.
Sunday, okay, yeah. Like, I'm looking forward to just good football, bro. Like, I think we had some good games, minus the Cowboys and Packers game. But I'm interested in these matchups, man. I like seeing I like seeing the offensive minded coaches going against like these top defensive minded coaches. I love how Todd Bowles calls his defense. Them boys are firing, and like you said, Dre, I don't know about Detroit secondary, bro. The way Baker Mayfield had time, and they got weapons like the Trey Palmer kid, Chris Godwin, and Mike Evans. They missed some shots against Philly. Like it's definitely gonna be there for them against Detroit.
Yeah,
And
I
one
agree.
last thing for me, we didn't actually talk about this guy, but another candidate is going to be in play, Mike McDonald in the Ravens defense. You'll get to see them
Yes.
this weekend. So we didn't talk about him, but I mean, we already, if I've heard correctly, I think we've already interviewed him and
Yes.
Anthony Weaver.
Yeah,
So
that's what the article from Sports Illustrated said that they interviewed McDonald Weaver already.
yeah.
Boom. There it is. Fellas, Dre, AJ, man. We're gonna have to have a mulligan on the weekend, bruh. No more of them clubs, bruh. Like we don't gotta do the hoop and watch the game, bro. We go to a sports bar, bruh.
Man,
AJ went viral on us.
Went viral, bruh.
That shit was crazy, bro. Like and then to top it off, get back to the whip and that joint got towed. Like that just I was just like, nah, bro.
That's an expensive ass weekend, bro. And then the way you play, I respect you. Like for the way you like, it's all good. Like to have that level of patience, bro. I need that. Lord bless me with the patience that AJ got.
Hey, Marl, I think AJ missed when we was talking about how angry you were.
Oh yeah, he missed every part. I broke down what happened, man. It was some things that happened before that, and the last straw was the drink spilled on my shoe, bro. That was it. That was it. I was like, yeah, I don't need no more drinks. I'm losing money. I'm
man,
ready to
they
go.
say a word rest of the night. He was done.
Man, like I will say, like, that's my gift and my curse. I'm patient as hell, bro. I don't really be tripping about nothing.
Oh yeah,
like,
you definitely did. You said that too. You said that Saturday.
Yeah, at the end of the day, man, it is what it is. But yeah, Maul was tight. I was like, damn, this nigga.
Yeah, bro.
I'm like telling him, like, hey, bro, I got a man that
I ain't trying to hear
it.
Anyway, I was telling him about OxyClean.
That nigga, he was mad. I was like,
that was the last straw, bro.
Hey,
but no, I did get. So I didn't have to buy no. I didn't have to buy no new shoes, Dre. I was able to get the junks out at the crib, so I avoided that one. I still gotta find my shirt though. Find some shit for that. It spilled on my jeans too. That's the part I left out. It spilled. I realized when I got home that the drink spilled on my jeans too. So I was like, I can get that out, but do I go to the cleaners or do I wash it? So
man, Shorty talking about, I turned the hose because you were saying it wasn't pulling. I'm like, bruh, the joint was pulling the whole time. You just need a new code. Like, yeah, that whole.
What you talking about? The second spot?
No, at Signature.
What spilled on your shoes? The hose
on your shoes. That's how the drink spilled.
Yeah, that's what happened.
She spilled the shit on your shoes.
Oh, she spilled. I didn't even see it, bro.
Yeah, she knocked down the drinks.
Yeah,
Dre,
that's what happened,
bruh. So that makes, bruh. So she asked me, did I give you your drink after? Oh, she crazy.
She blamed it on AJ. She said AJ did it. She said you did it. AJ was like, nah, you did it.
I'm like, nah, you did it. You the one moving the hose and shit. Like,
I didn't even realize. That's even worse. Yeah. I'm over here. Look, I didn't even realize how the drink got spilled. I just looked down.
That's how it happened. Yeah.
So she knocked the joint down, and then she had the nerve to ask me, did I give you your second drink, bruh?
She knocked down 2 cups, bruh. Like,
yeah, mine spilled too, Jamal. My drink spilled too.
Boy, if I'd have known that, bro, I probably wouldn't have held my tongue. I looked at her. Go ahead. I was looking at her, bro. I was fighting back everything that I wanted to say. that if I'd known that, bro, I would have had a problem, bro. And then she watched me. She was waiting for me to say something. I was like, bro. I was like, yeah, I got my drink.
But I mean, it was good to link up with y'all, man.
Absolutely,
got to do it more often.
Yeah, man.
I'll let y'all pick the spot next time. I try to keep it in VA because it was cheaper. I already knew that, but ultimately, whatever the NFL.
But I mean, we could run Caspi back because Peacock is different. Like that's the only thing. We went out for a Peacock game. So maybe like if Championship Sunday or something like that, maybe they do have the games on in there, or maybe this weekend or Saturday or Sunday they don't have.
Yeah, they normally have it. They normally have it on. I think for me, man, it was just the combination of of the taxing at the spot, which is cool. But then on top of that, you know what happened all before we even got to the spot.
Yeah.
Like I ordered a drink and a hookah, and they weren't trying to change the channel and said they couldn't. So I said to them, Dre, like, yo, I just bought this hookah. I only had 2 puffs of the joint. Just give it to these young ladies over here instead of just throwing it away. They talking about we don't know if we could do that. I'm like, what you mean? I done already paid for it. Like, I can move this shit wherever I want to.
Right.
Like, so yeah, but I mean, and then to cap it off, like the whole I get back, I'm like, dog, did they steal my car? Like, what happened? Because the last thing I'm thinking is it got towed. And that joint definitely got towed, hit me for $215. Like,
that's crazy.
Talking about, yeah, we charge you for a weekend charge, an after hours charge.
But why did they tow your car? Is the question.
Yeah, that's
you
weird
parked illegally? Like,
and on top of that, because somebody
it?
parked where I left. When I left, somebody took my parking spot. And when you texted us, AJ, it was only like an hour or hour and a half since I left the spot. So I'm confused.
Yeah, bro. I don't know, man. They talking about, oh, it's private parking. You weren't a customer at any of the.
How they know that?
I was like, how would you know that, bro? I was arguing with this old white piece of trash. like, bro, are you kidding me, dog? Like, what are you talking about? How you gonna tell me if I was a customer or not? Why would I be here? Like, I'm like, I've been doing business with these folks and been here for years, bro. I ain't never had no episode like this. But today it snowed. Tomorrow I'm gonna go to the Arlington County Court, take care of that. Cause I'm like, nah, you definitely not about to finesse me, bro. Like, that was crazy. I'm like, I ain't had no choice but to take care of it now. I even called a non-emergency number. Like, yo, these people playing, bro. I ain't trying to hurt nobody, dog, but these people playing.
Technically, too, though, like, you knew the owner. The owner knew you was in the establishment. Like, it could have been as simple. Like I can definitely provide proof that I was.
I mean, I got my receipt. I got my transaction history. That's what I'm saying.
There you go.
Like, y'all tweaking.
Good scam running there, man. They was running one on you.
Dog, the lady said we towed 11 cars from there tonight.
Imagine if you was in the
11 times $215.
Right.
I'm like, bro, I need to open up a tow company. Like, that's insane. That's just one business.
Oh no, they do be jugging, bro. They especially on the Maryland side. I know that, and especially at Morgan State. I got stories with that one. They be on moves, bro. Plotting. But all right, that's gonna wrap it up for us. Dre, AJ, y'all boys be safe. We're gonna link in again before these playoffs is up. But yeah, we'll be back when we figure out this head coaching stuff. It's gonna be fluent. Y'all just stay tuned. Make sure y'all have alerts on for YouTube so we can just tap in when we get the news. But that's gonna take it up for us. All 32 is on Thursday. Until then, be safe, man. Peace.
Yes, sir.